This story of Paddington is called The Ice Disco, as seen on television. Dear Aunt Lucy, this week I've learned that we shouldn't let our worries hold us back. It all began when I stumbled upon something strange in the park. One day, Paddington saw something he'd never seen before, an ice rink. Wow! He gasped in amazement. Oh, good morning, Mr. Gruber, he said, waving at his friend on either side. Good morning, Paddington, said Mr. Gruber sadly, before walking off. Paddington wondered what was wrong. He stepped onto the ice to speak to him. Oh, Mr. Gru! Brr! Cried Paddington, as he slipped and slid on the shiny surface. Whoa! Luckily, Miss Potts caught him. Thank you, Miss Potts, said Paddington, struggling to stay on his feet. Whatever this is, it's very slippy. It's an ice rink, Miss Potts explained. It's meant to be slippy. I'll order you some special bear-sized skates so you can join in at the ice disco on Friday. Oh, I would love to go to an ice disco, said Paddington. Back at the Browns' house, Jonathan and Judy were about to go to the ice rink to practice their routine with Matteo. Hold it, cried Mr. Brown. Jonathan, your shoelaces are undone again. Oh, Dad, we're in a hurry, grumbled Jonathan, quickly tying his laces. Oh, do you think we might have a dance on the ice? Mrs. Brown asked Mr. Brown. All that slipping and falling? Said Mr. Brown. Oh, no, you won't get me on the ice. But after Mrs. Brown left, Mr. Brown told Judy and Jonathan that he was going to teach himself to skate to surprise Mrs. Brown. How hard can it be? He said. Skating was much harder than Mr. Brown thought. He wibbled and wobbled everywhere. Ah! He gasped, almost doing the split. You're doing great, Dad, said Judy. Jonathan, Judy, and Matteo practiced their routine, and Jonathan did an amazing final jump. Woohoo! They all whooped. They were ready. Later at Mr. Gruber's shop, Paddington was admiring some red ice skates. Why are you selling these magnificent skates? Paddington asked. Mr. Gruber explained that he was a professional ice skater when he was younger, but he'd had a bad fall and hadn't skated since. Well, now's your chance, said Paddington. No, it's too late now. I'm too old, sighed Mr. Gruber, and he put his skates in the shop window. Paddington couldn't wait for his bear-sized ice skates to arrive, so Mr. Gruber took him to the park to practice his balancing skills. Oh, his sliding skills. Ah! And his speeding skills. Zoom! Mr. Gruber was impressed. Paddington was going to make a wonderful ice skater. A few days later, Paddington came racing into Mr. Gruber's shop with a box containing his new skates. But when he opened the box, he found roller skates, not ice skates. Oh no, said Paddington. These won't work on the ice rink. Just then, the shop's doorbell rang. Ding dong! It was Mr. Curry. I'd like to try those skates on, he said, pointing to the red skates in the window. No, you can't, said Mr. Gruber, holding them tightly. I don't think I can part with them. Sorry. Mr. Curry harumphed. I will never shop here again. But seconds later he changed his mind. Ooh, how much for the porcelain bunny rabbit? Are you keeping your skates so you can use them at the ice disco? Asked Paddington after Mr. Curry had left. No, it is not I who will be skating in them, said Mr. Gruber. With some changes, I think we can make them fit you. Fit me, said Paddington, with surprise. Oh, it would be an honour to wear them. It was the night of the ice disco, and the rink was packed, but the last person Mrs. Brown expected to see was Mr. Brown. Have you really learned to skate just for me? She asked, as he offered her his hand. I'm doing it. I'm really skating, he cried, clinging tightly to Mrs. Brown's shoulders as he shuffled along. Meanwhile, Mr. Gruber helped Paddington put on his brand new bear-sized ice skates. They fit perfectly. I cannot believe the progress you have made in such a short time, Paddington. Now, go and enjoy the disco, said Mr. Gruber. Oh, thank you, Mr. Gruber, said Paddington, as he glided onto the ice. Welcome to our first ice disco, announced Miss Potts on the microphone. Now please clear the ice as we have a special performance by the Ice Extravaganzas. The crowd cheered as Judy, Jonathan and Matteo skated across the ice together. Swish, swoosh, whoosh. Everything was going to plan until Jonathan was about to do the final jump. "Jonathan!" shouted Mr. Brown. "Laces!" But it was too late. Jonathan tripped. His ice skate flew off his foot and he began to spin out of control. Wah! Paddington leaped onto the ice to help Jonathan, but together they started to spin faster and faster. Jonathan spun off safely to the side of the rink, but Paddington just kept whirling round. He was about to crash when suddenly Mr. Gruber caught him by the paw and helped him skate to safety. Phew! Paddington and Mr. Gruber then twirled and glided over the ice, doing a beautiful ice dance together. When they stopped, the crowd cheered. "Thank you for saving me, Mr. Gruber," said Paddington. "Thank you for saving me," said Mr. Gruber. "Because of you, I can once again enjoy ice skating, one of my life's greatest loves. You really are a rare sort of bear." It seems there's really nothing better than learning a new skill or refinding one you thought you'd lost. I do wish you could have seen Mr. Gruber, Aunt Lucy. He looks spectacular. Love from Paddington. The end. This Paddington book is called The New Game, as seen on television. Dear Aunt Lucy, today I learned how to play a new game. It all started this morning. Paddington was in the bathroom. He turned on the shower. Someone turned it off. It was Judy. She was hiding in the bath. "Shh," she whispered. Mrs. Bird opened the shower curtain. "I found you," she said. Paddington didn't understand. "Why is Judy hiding?" he asked. "We were playing hide and seek," said Judy. "Mrs. Bird covers her eyes and counts to 10, said Jonathan. "We hide, then she has to find us." "What if she can't find you?" asked Paddington. "Well then, I say the magic words. Come out, wherever you are," said Mrs. Bird. Then they stop hiding. "We can play one quick game of hide and seek before my nap," she said. Paddington covered his eyes and counted to 10. Everyone ran off to hide. "Ready or not, here I come," he shouted. Paddington searched the house and found Jonathan in the washing basket. Then Jonathan helped Paddington look for Judy. "Found you," Jonathan shouted. But Mrs. Bird was much harder to find. They looked everywhere for her. Mrs. Bird had gone to hide in a cupboard, but when she closed the door, the handle fell off. She was stuck inside. Paddington looked for Mrs. Bird in the attic, but all he found was a door handle on the floor. He put it in his pocket. Paddington said the magic words, come out, wherever you are." But Mrs. Bird did not come out. "We must find Mrs. Bird," said Paddington. Judy, Jonathan, and Paddington showed a drawing of Mrs. Bird to lots of people. Nobody had seen her. Mr. Gruber had not seen Mrs. Bird either. "She was supposed to collect this part for her motorcycle," he said. Paddington put it in his pocket. Then he found the door handle. "I know where Mrs. Bird is," he said. Judy, Jonathan, and Paddington ran to the attic. They opened the cupboard. Mrs. Bird was asleep inside. "Found you!" they shouted. Mrs. Bird yawned. "Hello," she said. "I needed that nap." Learning how to play hide and seek was fun, Aunt Lucy, but finding Mrs. Bird was best of all. Love from Paddington. The end. This episode of The Adventures of Paddington is called The Alien Adventure, as seen on television. Dear Aunt Lucy, it has been a very exciting week. You might even say it has been out of this world. It all started with a visit to Mr. Gruber. "My radio has picked up a signal from France," said Mr. Gruber. "I think it could even pick up a signal from outer space." Paddington showed Judy and Jonathan the radio. Jonathan switched it on. They heard someone speak Italian. "Let me have a look," said Jonathan. "Give it here," said Judy. The radio fell and was covered with sticky marmalade. It started making very strange noises. Splat. "What on earth was that?" said Jonathan. "I don't think that came from Earth," said Judy. It sounded like it was an alien. At dinner, the family talked about aliens. "Do you think aliens are real?" asked Paddington. "I know all about aliens," said Mr. Brown. "Did you know that radio signals are sent into space to talk to aliens?" "Maybe we got lucky and heard the reply," said Jonathan. "Shh," said Judy, shoving some food in his mouth. That night, Paddington couldn't sleep. He was listening out for the alien. Judy and Jonathan came up to his room to join them. They looked out of the attic window. "We should tell aliens about bears, humans, and all the other important things on Earth, like marmalade," said Paddington. The next day, Judy fixed a microphone to the radio, but no aliens spoke. "What did we do last time we heard aliens?" said Paddington as he bit into a sandwich. Splat! Gzz. Marmalade landed on the radio. The radio made strange noises. "Marmalade is the secret to talking to aliens," said Paddington. "This is Paddington Bear. I am a bear," said Paddington to the radio. "Please come and visit us tonight." Paddington, Judy, and Jonathan had a lot of work to do. They wanted to show the aliens everything, including marmalade sandwiches. That night, a strange creature appeared. "Greetings," said Paddington. "We made you some sandwiches, but some got eaten accidentally while we were waiting." The alien took off its mask. It was Mr. Curry. Paddington was sad that no aliens came, but Mrs. Brown suggested they have a moonlight picnic. "Smashing idea! Out of this world," said Paddington. Luckily, Aunt Lucy, the radio was safe and sound, though we never heard from the aliens again. Love from Paddington. The end. This Paddington story is simply called Paddington, the original story of the Bear from Darkest Peru. Mr. and Mrs. Brown first met Paddington on a railway platform. In fact, that was how he came to have such an unusual name for a bear, because Paddington was the name of the station. The Browns were waiting to meet their daughter Judy when Mr. Brown noticed something small and furry near the left luggage office. "It looks like a bear," he said. "A bear?" repeated Mrs. Brown. "On Paddington Station? Don't be silly, Henry. There can't be." But Mr. Brown was right. It was sitting on an old leather suitcase marked "Wanted on Voyage," and as they drew near, it stood up and politely raised its hat. "Good afternoon," it said. "May I help you?" "It's very kind of you," said Mr. Brown, "but as a matter of fact, we were wondering if we could help you." "You're a very small bear," said Mrs. Brown. "Where are you from?" The bear looked round carefully before replying. "Darkest Peru. I'm not really supposed to be here at all. I'm a stowaway." "You don't mean to say you've come all the way from South America on your own?" exclaimed Mrs. Brown. "Whatever did you do for food?" Unlocking the suitcase, the bear took out an almost empty glass jar. "I ate marmalade," it said. Bears like marmalade. Mrs. Brown looked at the label around the bear's neck. It said quite simply, "Please look after this bear. Thank you." "Oh, Henry," she cried, "we can't leave him here all by himself. There's no knowing what might happen to him. Can't he come home and stay with us?" "Stay with us?" repeated Mr. Brown nervously. He looked down at the bear. Would you like that?" he asked. "That is," he added hastily, "if you have nothing else planned." "Oh, yes," replied the bear. "I'd like that very much. I've nowhere to go, and everyone seems in such a hurry." "That settles it," said Mrs. Brown. "Now you must be very thirsty after your journey. Mr. Brown can get you some tea while I go and meet our daughter Judy." "But Mary," said Mr. Brown, "we don't even know its name." Mrs. Brown thought for a moment. "I know," she said. "We'll call him Paddington, after the station." "Paddington!" The bear tested it several times to make sure. "It sounds very important." Mr. Brown tried it out next. "Follow me, Paddington," he said. "I'll take you to the snack bar." Mr. Brown was as good as his word. Paddington had never seen so many snacks on one tray, and he didn't know which to try first. He was so hungry and thirsty, he climbed up on the table to get a better look. Mr. Brown turned away, pretending he had tea with a bear on Paddington Station every day of his life. "Henry!" cried Mrs. Brown when she arrived with Judy. "What are you doing to that poor bear?" Paddington jumped up to raise his hat, and in his haste he trod on a strawberry tart, skidded over the cream, and fell over backwards into his cup of tea. "I think we'd better go before anything else happens," said Mr. Brown. Judy took hold of Paddington's paw. "Come along," she said. "We'll take you home, and you can meet Mrs. Bird and my brother Jonathan." Mr. Brown led the way to a waiting taxi. "Number 32, Windsor Gardens, please," he said. The driver stared at Paddington. "Bears is extra," he growled. "Sticky bears is twice as much, and make sure none of it comes off on my interior. It was clean when I set out this morning." The sun was shining as they drove out of the station, and there were cars and big red buses everywhere. Paddington waved to some people at a bus stop, and several of them waved back. It was all very friendly. Paddington tapped the taxi driver on his shoulder. "It isn't a bit like Darkest Peru," he announced. The man jumped at the sound of Paddington's voice. "Cream!" he said bitterly. "Cream and jam all over my coat!" He slid the little window behind him shut. "Oh dear, Henry," murmured Mrs. Brown. "I wonder if we're doing the right thing." Fortunately, before anyone had time to answer, they arrived at Windsor Gardens, and Judy helped Paddington to the pavement. "Now you're going to meet Mrs. Bird," she said. "She looks after us. She's a bit fierce at times, but she doesn't really mean it. I'm sure you'll like her." Paddington felt his knees begin to wobble. "I'm sure I shall, if you say so," he replied. "The thing is, will she like me?" "Goodness gracious!" exclaimed Mrs. Bird. "What have you got there?" "It's not a what," said Judy. "It's a bear called Paddington, and he's coming to stay with us." "A bear?" said Mrs. Bird, as Paddington raised his hat. "Well, he has good manners, I'll see that for him." "I'm afraid I stepped on the jam tart by mistake," said Paddington. "I could see that," said Mrs. Bird. "You'd better have a bath before you're very much older. Judy can turn it on for you. I dare say you'll be wanting some marmalade too." "I think she likes you," whispered Judy. Paddington had never been in a bathroom before, and while the water was running he made himself at home. First of all, he tried writing his new name in the steam over the mirror. Then he used Mr. Brown's shaving foam to draw a map of Peru on the floor. It wasn't until a drip landed on his head that he remembered what he was supposed to be doing. He soon discovered that getting into the bath is one thing, but it's quite another matter getting out again, especially when it's full of soapy water. Paddington tried calling out "Help!" at first in a quiet voice so as to not disturb anyone, then very loudly, "Help! Help!" When that didn't work, he began bailing the water out with his hat, but the hat had several holes in it, and his map of Peru soon turned into a sea of foam. Suddenly, Jonathan and Judy burst into the bathroom and lifted the dripping Paddington onto the floor. "Thank goodness you're all right," cried Judy. "We heard you calling out." "Fancy making such a mess," said Jonathan admiringly. "You should have pulled the plug out." "Oh," said Paddington, "I never thought of that." When Paddington came downstairs, he looked so clean no one could possibly be cross with him. His fur was all soft and silky, his nose gleamed, and his paws had lost all traces of the jam and cream. The Browns made room for him in a small armchair, and Mrs. Bird brought him a pot of tea and a plate of hot buttered toast and marmalade. "Now," said Mrs. Brown, "you must tell us all about yourself. I'm sure you must have had lots of adventures." "I have," said Paddington earnestly. "Things are always happening to me. I'm that sort of a bear." He settled back into the armchair. "I was brought up by my Aunt Lucy in Darkest Peru," he began, "but she had to go into a home for retired bears in Lima." He closed his eyes thoughtfully, and a hush fell over the room as everyone waited expectantly. After a while, when nothing happened, they began to get restless. Mr. Brown tried coughing, then he reached across and poked Paddington. "Well, I never," he said. "I do believe he's fast asleep." "After all that's happened to him," said Mrs. Brown. "Is it any wonder?" The end. This episode of The Adventures of Paddington is called First Halloween, as seen on TV. Dear Aunt Lucy, Today I learned about a celebration where children dress up and have fun. Well, actually, it's not just the children who have fun. It all started in the kitchen. The Browns were looking at a pile of strange decorations on the kitchen table. "It's Halloween," said Mrs. Brown, "a special day when people dress up and do things to scare beasties away." "That doesn't sound fun," said Paddington. "Oh, it is," said Jonathan. "We'll show you." Paddington helped Judy and Mrs. Bird put up Halloween decorations on the outside of the house. There were ghosts, spiders, cobwebs, and pumpkins everywhere. "This doesn't seem all that scary," said Paddington, feeling relieved. Suddenly, a bouncy bat decoration swooped down towards Paddington, making him jump. "Ah!" "Sorry," Jonathan shouted from the balcony above them. "Why don't you join us, Mr. Curry?" asked Paddington politely when the Browns' neighbour arrived home. "We're having all sorts of Halloween fun." "No, thank you. I hate Halloween," Mr. Curry grumbled. "I shall lock my door, turn my lights off, and be glad when it's all over." Later, in the treehouse, Jonathan and Judy showed Paddington how to carve the perfect Halloween pumpkin. "You need to make a scary face," explained Jonathan, carving the pumpkin with his spoon. "Like this," said Judy. "Whoa!" gasped the poor bear, stumbling back in fright. He backed further and further away until Paddington toppled out of the treehouse. Luckily, he managed to grab hold of a rope and sail safely down to the ground. But the pumpkin came tumbling down after Paddington and landed right on his head. "I'm okay," he mumbled from inside the pumpkin, wobbling from paw to paw. Mrs. Bird had told Mr. Brown that nothing would scare her, so he sneaked up on her while she was doing the washing up. "Roar!" But she didn't even blink. He hid in the bathroom cupboard to frighten her when she opened the door, but she piled toilet rolls on top of him and calmly walked away. He even gave her a trick box of nuts to open with a springy snake hidden inside, but nothing happened. Boing! Until it opened. He opened it himself. "Ah!" Meanwhile, Jonathan and Judy helped Paddington get ready. "Tell me again," asked a puzzled Paddington. "Why am I dressed as Pigeonton?" Jonathan explained that on Halloween people dress up and go trick-or-treating. If people don't give us a treat, we play a trick. Paddington thought that sounded a little mean. "Would you mind awfully if I do treat-or-treat instead?" "Treat-or-treating? That does sound much nicer," agreed Mrs. Brown as they set off. "Let's try it." When they arrived at Mr. Gruber's shop, he made them jump by popping out of a huge pumpkin. "Treat-or-treat?" Paddington asked, offering a marmalade roll. "Oh my goodness," gasped a delighted Mr. Gruber. "Thank you, and here are some treats for all of you." "And here's a little treat for you," said Paddington, offering him another marmalade roll. "Happy Halloween, Mr. Gruber!" everyone cheered as they waved goodbye. "Happy Noche de Brujas!" cheered Sophia when the treat-or-treaters arrived at her cafe. "Oh dear," said Paddington, looking worried. "We aren't celebrating that, Sophia. We are celebrating Halloween." "Don't worry," said Sophia. "Noche de Brujas is what we call Halloween in Colombia. Here are some treats for you." And she put sweets in all their buckets. "Thank you, and here is your treat, Sophia," said Paddington, kindly offering her a marmalade sandwich from his hat. After a few more visits, the treat-or-treaters arrived home. "Welcome back," said Mrs. Bird. "Did you have a good time?" "For the world's first treat-or-treat session," said Judy, holding out her full bucket, "I'd say it was brilliant." But Paddington had noticed something odd. Mr. Curry's door was open. "That's strange," said Mrs. Bird. "He said he was going to lock his door as he didn't like Halloween. I do hope he's all right." Mr. Brown thought this a check, so they all crept inside. "Mr. Curry, are you all right?" Mrs. Bird called. There was a rattle from underneath a metal dish on the kitchen table. Mrs. Bird slowly picked it up and... Boo! "Ah!" she screamed when she saw Mr. Curry's head underneath, painted green and surrounded by sausages. Mr. Brown raced in, laughing. "We flapped the unflappable Mrs. Bird." "Best Halloween ever," Mr. Curry and Mr. Brown said together, delighted that their trick had worked. "You didn't scare me," replied Mrs. Bird at first, and then changed her tune. "Okay, you did." "But, Mr. Curry, I thought you didn't like Halloween," said Paddington, feeling a bit confused. "I'm afraid I don't have any treats left." "I love Halloween. I just pretended not to for Mr. Brown's plan," explained Mr. Curry. "Don't worry, Bear. Making Mrs. Bird jump was my treat. We decided it was much more fun to give treats rather than tricks, apart from Mr. Curry, who really liked the trick he and Mr. Brown played on Mrs. Bird. Really, they behaved just like children. Happy Halloween! Love from Paddington." The end. This episode of The Adventures of Paddington is called The Ranger Badge, as seen on television. Dear Aunt Lucy, this week I learned that everybody is good at something. It all started with a Ranger challenge. Jonathan came home from Rangers Club. "I only need 2 more badges to be an Eagle Ranger," he said. "I can be your Ranger helper," says Paddington. They went to find Jonathan's Ranger badge book. "I need my communicator badge and my helper neighbour badge," says Jonathan. "Shall we see if Mr. Curry needs help?" asked Paddington. "Challenge accepted," said Jonathan. Paddington and Jonathan knocked on Mr. Curry's door. "Hello, Mr. Curry," said Jonathan. "Do you need any help today?" Mr. Curry did not want any help. "No, thank you," he said. Mr. Curry began to shut the door when he remembered a job that needed doing. "You could clean my kitchen," he said, "but you must clean quietly." "You won't know we're here," said Jonathan. Mr. Curry's kitchen was very dirty. Paddington and Jonathan worked together. They swept the floor, washed the dishes, and cleaned the windows. Soon the kitchen was sparkling clean. "All done, Mr. Curry," said Jonathan. Mr. Curry was amazed. His kitchen was spotless. "Helper neighbour badge complete," said Jonathan. "Now I need my communicator badge," said Jonathan. "I must send a clear message to someone far away." Paddington ran to the end of the garden. "Shall we shout at each other, Jonathan?" he called. Jonathan had an idea. "We can use walkie-talkies," he said. "Talkie-walkies?" asked Paddington. "Walkie-talkies," corrected Jonathan. He gave Paddington a walkie-talkie. "You walk to the kitchen and I'll talk to you from here," says Jonathan. "Hello, can you hear me?" asked Jonathan through the walkie-talkie. "Yes, Ranger," said Paddington. Communicator badge complete. Later, Miss Potts gave Jonathan his 2 badges. "Congratulations, Eagle Ranger Jonathan," and she gave Paddington a special badge for being the best Ranger helper. Everybody is good at something, Aunt Lucy, and I am very pleased to have my first Ranger badge. Love from Paddington. The end. This episode of The Adventures of Paddington is called First Snow, as seen on television. Dear Aunt Lucy, this week something amazing happened. It's almost as if you knew it would because you sent me that wonderful, warm, woolly hat. After Captain Scott reached the South Pole, he began his dangerous journey home through the snow, read Judy out loud. "But did he find a Yeti?" asked Jonathan. "Of course not," replied Judy. "They're not real." "What's a Yeti?" asked Paddington. "It's a huge beast that lives in snow," growled Jonathan, pretending to be a Yeti. With great big claws and feet the size of Paddington backed away nervously from Jonathan until he fell on his bottom, knocking off his new woolly hat. "Really big feet?" suggested Paddington. "Exactly!" cried Jonathan. "Whoa!" Bump. Just then they heard Mrs. Brown calling them inside. "Coming!" Judy shouted as she scrambled out of the treehouse, following her brother. Paddington hurried after them, but he forgot his hat. Inside, Mrs. Brown was having a clear-out. "You can't throw these away," said Mr. Brown, holding up his old snowshoes. "You can keep them if you promise that you'll wear them," said Mrs. Brown. "I will," said Mr. Brown. The next morning, Paddington woke up feeling anxious. "I left the hat from Aunt Lucy in the treehouse," he told Mrs. Brown. "You can get it after breakfast," she said, "though you'll see the garden looks a little different this morning." "Wow!" gasped Paddington, looking out of the window at the beautiful snowy scene. He had never seen snow settle before. It looks like someone has rubbed out the garden. After breakfast, Mrs. Brown told Jonathan and Judy that Paddington needed them both for a hat rescue expedition. "Ready and raring to go on a snowy adventure," said Jonathan, saluting. "Just like Captain Scott," added Judy. Captain Judy, Jonathan, and Paddington trudged through the heavy snow towards the treehouse, their mission to rescue Paddington's precious hat. "There it is!" cried Paddington. Up in the treehouse, Paddington was about to pick up his hat when a little robin flew away with it. "Quick, follow that hat!" called Paddington, racing after the robin through the house and onto the slippery pavement. Whoa! Splat! Luckily, Judy had just the thing to help. A sledge! They hopped on and zoomed along the icy pavement after the little bird. Woohoo! Just as Paddington was about to grab the hat, bump! The sledge hit a lamppost and they all flew off onto the slippery path. Whee! And they slid all the way to the entrance of the park. "Look at those Yeti-sized footprints," gasped Jonathan. "Yetis aren't real," said Judy. "Come on, we need to get Paddington's hat back." They hurried into the park, following the bird, the hat, and the giant footprints. As they gazed in wonder at the snow-covered park, Jonathan got smacked by his snowball. "Oi!" he cried in surprise. "Looks like Matteo wants a snowball fight," said Judy, diving behind a tree. "Ha ha!" giggled Matteo, taking aim again. Paddington had never had a snowball fight before and didn't know what to do. He tried to throw a snowball, but instead it rolled down the slope, getting bigger and bigger. "Oh dear," he said as the enormous snowball headed straight for Matteo. It crashed into the tree Matteo was hiding behind, and the snow in its branches covered him. Splat! "Oops, sorry, Matteo," cried Paddington. "I'm okay," said Matteo, popping out the snow. Suddenly, there was a tweeting noise. "Look, there's my hat!" Paddington cried, seeing the robin fly up to its nest. Paddington quickly climbed up the tree. "Hello, could I have my hat back?" Paddington asked the bird. "Aunt Lucy sent it to me, and it's ever so precious." Just then, 5 tiny chicks poked their heads out from underneath the hat. "Oh my, how wonderful!" whispered Paddington. "Where's your hat?" asked Judy when Paddington reached the ground. "I gave it to the bird," explained Paddington, pointing up at the nest. "She needs it more than I do to keep her chicks warm." Suddenly, there was a strange noise. "Huh? What was that?" asked Judy. "Look!" gasped Jonathan. "Yeti-sized footprints! It's following us!" They hid behind a tree, and the sound got louder and louder until... "Hello, everyone," said Mr. Brown. "Ah!" they all screamed. "Dad," said Jonathan, "we thought you were a Yeti." Paddington pointed at the massive footprints. "Oh, that's these snowshoes," said Mr. Brown, laughing. "I promised Mrs. Brown I'd use them. Come on, everybody, let's all go home." "So that's why I don't have your wonderful hat anymore, Aunt Lucy. I was able to give a cozy home to a family who really needed it. Somehow I thought you wouldn't mind. Love from Paddington. P.S. I hope you enjoyed the snowball." The end. This Paddington story is called Paddington in the Garden. One morning, Paddington went out into the garden and began making a list of all the nice things he could think of about being a bear and living with the Browns. He had a room of his own and a warm bed to sleep in, and he had marmalade for breakfast every morning. In darkest Peru, he had only been allowed it on Sundays. The list was soon so long he nearly went out of paper before he realized he had left one out of the nicest things of all. The garden itself. Apart from the occasional noise from a nearby building site, it was so quiet and peaceful it didn't seem like being in London at all. But nice gardens don't just happen. They usually require a lot of hard work, and the one at number 32 Windsor Gardens was no exception. Mr. Brown had to mow the lawn twice a week, and Mrs. Brown was kept busy weeding the flower beds. There was always something to do. Even Mrs. Bird lent a hand whenever she had a spare moment. It was Mrs. Bird who first suggested giving Jonathan, Judy, and Paddington each a piece of the garden. It will keep certain bears out of mischief, she said meaningly, and it will be fun for Jonathan and Judy as well. Mr. Brown agreed it was a very good idea, and he marked out 3 plots at the far end of the lawn. Paddington was most excited. "I don't suppose there are many bears who have their own garden," he exclaimed. Early the next morning, all 3 set to work. Judy decided to make a flower bed, and Jonathan had his eye on some old paving stones. Paddington didn't know what to do. In the past, he had often found that gardening was much harder than it looked, especially when you only had paws. In the end, armed with a jar of Mrs. Bird's homemade marmalade, he borrowed Mr. Brown's wheelbarrow and set off to look for ideas. His first stop was a stall in the market, where he bought a book called How to Plan Your Garden by Lionel Tray. It came complete with a large packet of assorted seeds, and if the picture on the front cover was anything to go by, it was no wonder Mr. Trugg looked happy, for he seemed to do most of his planning while lying in a hammock. By the end of the book, without lifting a finger, he was surrounded by blooms. Paddington decided it was very good value indeed, especially when the owner at the stall gave him 2p change. Mr. Trugg's book was full of useful hints and tips. The first one suggested that before starting work, it was a good idea to close your eyes and try to picture what the garden would look like when it was finished. Having walked into a lamppost by mistake, Paddington decided to read another page or two, and there he found a much better idea. Mr. Trugg advised standing back and looking at the site from a safe distance, preferably somewhere high up. He knew just the spot. By the time Paddington reached the building site near the Browns' house, it was the middle of the morning, and the men were all at their tea break. Placing his jar of marmalade onto a wooden platform for safekeeping, he sat on a pile of bricks for a rest while he considered the matter. There was no one about, and there was a ladder nearby. Mr. Trugg was quite right. The Browns' garden did look very different from high up, but before he had time to get his breath back, Paddington heard the sound of an engine starting up. He peered through a gap in the boards. As he did so, his eyes nearly popped out. On the ground just below him, a man was emptying a load of concrete on the very spot where he had left his jar of marmalade. Paddington scrambled back down the ladder as fast as his legs would carry him, reaching the bottom just as the foreman came around a corner. "Is anything wrong?" asked the man. "You look upset." "My jar's been buried," exclaimed Paddington hotly, pointing in the pile of concrete. "It had some of Mrs. Bird's best golden chunks in it too." "I won't ask how your jar got there," said the foreman, turning to Paddington as his men got set to work cleaning the concrete into small piles, "or what you were doing up the ladder." "I'm glad of that," said Paddington, politely raising his hat. Suddenly there was a whirring sound from somewhere overhead, and to Paddington's surprise the platform landed at his feet. "My marmalade!" he exclaimed thankfully. "Your marmalade?" repeated the foreman, staring at the jar. "Did you say marmalade?" "That's right," said Paddington. "I put it there ready for my elevensies. It must have been taken up by mistake. Now the top's come off." It was the foreman's turn to look as though he could hardly believe his eyes. "That's special quick drying cement," he wailed. "It's probably rock hard already. Ruined by a bear's marmalade. No one will give me 2p for it now." "I will," said Paddington eagerly. "I've had an idea." Paddington was busy for the rest of the week. When the builders saw the rock garden he had made, they were most impressed, and the foreman even gave him some plants to finish it off until the seeds started to grow. "It's National Garden Day on Saturday," he said. "There are some very famous people judging it. I'll spread the word around. You never know your luck." The foreman was as good as his word, and on Saturday half the neighbourhood turned up at number 32 Windsor Gardens to see the judges arrive. Paddington nearly fell over backwards with surprise when he discovered that no less a person than Mr. Lionel Trugg himself was leading the procession. "It's very good of you to get out of your hammock, Mr. Trugg," he exclaimed. Not at all, said Lionel Trugg. My pleasure, I must say. I love your orange stones. Where did you find them? I didn't, said Paddington. I think they found me, thanks to the builders. Congratulations, said Mr. Trugg, as he handed Paddington a golden star. It's good to see a young bear taking up gardening. I hope you will be the first of many. Who would have believed it? Said Mr. Brown, as the last of the crowd departed. You must write and tell Aunt Lucy all about it, said Mrs. Bird. They'll be very excited in the Home for Retired Bears when they hear the news. Paddington thought that was a good idea, but he had something to do first. He wanted to add one more important item to his list of all the nice things there were about being a bear and living with the Browns, having my own rock garden. Then he signed his name and added his special paw print just to show it was genuine. The end. This episode of The Adventures of Paddington is called Paddington's Birthday Party. No one, not even Paddington, knew quite how old he was when he arrived at number 32 Windsor Gardens, so the Browns decided to start again and call him 1. Everyone agreed with Mrs. Bird when she said they ought to celebrate the occasion by holding a birthday party. Paddington had lots of presents, but his favourite one of all was a conjuring outfit from Mr. and Mrs. Brown. It came from Barkridge's, and it not only had a table and a large box for making things disappear, but there was a special magic wand and a book of instructions as well. Unfortunately, before he had time to try out any of the tricks, the guests began to arrive, and he hurried downstairs to greet them. His friend Mr. Gruber, who kept an antique shop in the market, was the first to arrive, and he was closely followed by the Browns' bad-tempered neighbour, Mr. Curry. Mr. Gruber was always welcome, but Mr. Curry hadn't even been invited. I bet he's only after the free tea, hissed Jonathan. Luckily, Mrs. Bird's teas were usually so ample there was more than enough for everyone, including uninvited guests, so even Mr. Curry had no cause to complain. In fact, everyone voted it the best tea they ever had, and Paddington himself was so full he had a job finding enough breath to blow out the candle. But at least he managed it without singeing his whiskers, and everyone clapped and wished him a happy birthday. After tea, Paddington announced that he had a special surprise for everyone. Then he disappeared upstairs to his room in order to get ready for it. While Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Bird cleared away the tea things, Mr. Brown set about arranging the rest of the guests at the other end of the room. No sooner had everyone settled down than the door opened and Paddington reappeared, staggering under the weight of his magic outfit. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, when all was ready, "my next trick is impossible." "But you haven't done one yet," called Mr. Curry. Paddington ignored the interruption. He consulted his instruction book. "For this trick," he continued, "I would like an egg, please." Mrs. Bird looked worried. "Oh dear," she said. "Can't you use something else?" "No," said Paddington fervently. "It definitely says an egg. I'm going to turn it into a bunch of flowers," he added darkly, "if I can get my magic wand to work." Paddington held up the magic wand and began making some passes over it with his other paw. To everyone's astonishment, including his own, it suddenly went quite limp. "Quite good for a bear," said Mr. Curry over the applause. "Of course, we all know it's joined by elastic in the middle, but quite good." Paddington gave the Brown's neighbour a hard stare, but luckily Mrs. Bird came into the room at that moment carrying an egg. "Do be careful," she warned. "I had the carpet cleaned only last week." Paddington thanked Mrs. Bird, and then placed the egg on his magic table and covered it with a handkerchief. "Now," he announced, "if you watch closely you will see it turn into a bunch of flowers." "I'd sooner you turn it into an omelette," called Mr. Curry. "I'm getting hungry again." But Mr. Curry's words fell on deaf ears, for Paddington was much too busy getting ready for his trick. He appeared to be doing something behind the table. "I shall now say the magic word," he announced, tapping the mound under the handkerchief with his wand. "Abracadabra!" As Paddington tapped at the handkerchief, a murmur of approval went round the audience, for sure enough the egg had disappeared. "Bravo!" shouted Mr. Gruber. "Good old Paddington!" cried Judy. But Paddington was far from finished. Before the applause for the first half of his trick had died away, he raised his hat and withdrew a bunch of roses. Mr. Brown took a closer look at the crumpled objects in Paddington's paw. "Aren't those my roses?" he exclaimed. "No wonder the bushes looked rather bare just now." "Shh, Henry," said Mrs. Brown. "I'm sure they'll straighten out again once they're in water." Besides, I think he's about to do another trick. Perhaps he's going to make himself disappear now, says Judy. Everyone waited patiently for something to happen, but as the minutes ticked by, they looked more and more uneasy. Do you think young Mr. Brown's all right in there? Asked Mr. Gruber at last. No, I'm not, cried Paddington. It's all dark and I can't read my instructions. Mr. Gruber hurried to Paddington's assistance. If I were you, he said, as Paddington called out, I would try something simpler next time. Here, here, called Mr. Corry. I didn't think much of that trick. I'd like to see something else. Paddington thanked his friend and then peered at the instruction book again. There's a very good one here to do with a watch, he announced at last. At the mention of the word watch, everyone hastily pulled their cuffs down over their wrists. All, that is, except Mr. Corry, who had just spied a plate of sandwiches which had been overlooked. You wanted to see another trick, said Mrs. Bird pointedly. Now's your chance. Very well, said Mr. Corry with ill grace, but make sure you look after it, Bear. It's very valuable. Paddington placed Mr. Corry's watch on the table, covered it carefully with a handkerchief, and then picked up a large mallet. This is a very good trick, he announced, as he hit the handkerchief several times as hard as he could. It says so in the book. Now, continued Paddington, I will lift up the corner of the handkerchief so, and... Oh dear! Oh dear, bellowed Mr. Corry. What do you mean, oh dear? What's happened, Bear? Out of the corner of his eye, Paddington caught sight of some ominous words in his book of instructions. For this trick, it said, it is necessary to use a dummy watch. I think I perhaps forgot to say abracadabra, Mr. Corry, he faltered. Abracadabra, thundered Mr. Corry as he stared at the remains of his watch. Abracadabra! I'll give you abracadabra. That was a very valuable antique. It was shockproof and it had 20 jewels. It doesn't look very shockproof to me, said Mr. Brown, and it certainly isn't valuable, said Mr. Gruber. Old it may be, but it's not an antique. I remember selling it to you years ago, and you didn't pay me much for it then. I think I may have found one of the jewels, Mr. Corry, said Paddington excitedly. One of the jewels, exclaimed Mr. Corry. What about the other 19? This is disgraceful. Mr. Corry was so cross he flung himself down in his chair, and just as quickly as he leapt up again. Ugh, he said, I'm sitting on something sticky. Oh dear, said Paddington, I think you sat on my disappearing egg, Mr. Corry. It must have reappeared again. Serves you right for telling lies to a young bear, said Mrs. Bird sternly, trying to make him think it was a valuable watch indeed. Pah! snorted Mr. Corry. But for once the Browns' neighbour was at a loss for words. I shall never, he said, glaring at Paddington as he made for the door, ever come to one of your parties again. When the laughter had died down, Mr. Brown looked at his own watch. It's getting very near bedtime, he said. Most of all Paddington's, so I suggest we all do a disappearing trick now. All good things come to an end, said Judy, as she and Jonathan joined Paddington on the doorstep of number 32 Windsor Gardens while he waved goodbye to everyone, even birthday parties. If they didn't, said Jonathan, you'd never have another one to look forward to. Perhaps, said Paddington, as he went upstairs to bed. I'd better write this one up in my scrapbook first before I forget it. Besides, I want to tell my Aunt Lucy all about it, and so much has happened, I may have a job getting it all on one postcard. The end. This episode of The Adventures of Paddington is called Love Day, as seen on television. Dear Aunt Lucy, today has been a day full of love. Did you know that there is an actual day, a year to celebrate it? It's a day called Love Day. Happy Love Day, said Mr. Brown, surprising Mrs. Brown with a special heart-shaped breakfast. What's Love Day? asked Paddington, popping up at the table. It sounds like a jolly nice day. It is, replied Mrs. Brown. It's about letting the people you love know that you love them. Happy Love Day, everyone, said Mrs. Bird as she walked in, carrying a large bag of Love Day cards. Mrs. Brown reminded her about the special treats they had in store that evening. Mr. Brown is taking us all to the Colombian Cafe in the park to celebrate. He booked it weeks ago. Yeah, Mr. Brown dropped the saucepan into the sink with a splash. You haven't forgot to book the cafe, have you, darling? asked Mrs. Brown, looking worried. No, of course not, sputtered Mr. Brown, rushing out. But Mr. Brown had forgotten. He'd hurried to the park with Judy and Jonathan to see if he could book a table for that evening. On the way, they bumped into Mateo and his dog Lucky, whose lead got wrapped round Mr. Brown's scooter. When Lucky spotted a squirrel, he went charging after it, dragging Mr. Brown with him. No! Lucky, stop! After pulling Mr. Brown around the whole park, Lucky finally skidded to a halt outside the Colombian Cafe. He sat proudly in front of Jonathan, Judy, and Mateo while Mr. Brown tried to recover. Ruff! Once he got his breath back, Mr. Brown begged Sophia for a table for the Love Day dinner, but she said the cafe was fully booked. No! Cried Mr. Brown. Then Sophia had an idea. If we push some tables together, I can squeeze you in. Oh, thank you, said a relieved Mr. Brown. Meanwhile, Paddington had made a special Love Day card for Mrs. Bird. Thank you, Paddington, she replied, admiring his handiwork. That's very kind of you. But Paddington hadn't just made one Love Day card, he'd made a whole stack of them. Mrs. Bird, could you help me deliver these, please? Goodness, Paddington, gasped Mrs. Bird. You've made a lot of friends since arriving from Peru. Yes, I suppose I have, agreed Paddington. I've made cards for everyone. Mrs. Bird took Paddington out on her motorcycle to deliver his Love Day cards. Brum, brum, brum. Happy Love Day, Pigeonton, Paddington called to his feathered friend. I've made you a card. Whoosh! A great gust of wind blew Paddington's cards clean out of his paws. Oh, bother, cried Paddington as his cards were scattered far and wide. Don't worry, said Mrs. Bird, dropping Paddington off on the pavement. I'll get them back. And with that, she zoomed away. As Paddington walked along the road, the wind whipped another one of his cards past him and into Mr. Gruber's antique shop. Inside, Paddington spotted the card stuck in a suit of armour. There you are. Ah! Paddington couldn't reach it, so he climbed on top of a globe, but spun in round and round. Sorry, I'll read that again. Paddington couldn't reach it, so he climbed onto a globe, but it began to spin round and round. He just managed to grab the card when the suit of armour toppled towards him with a crash. Goodness me, Paddington, said Mr. Gruber, hearing the kerfuffle. What's going on? He looked down to see his suit of armour in pieces on the floor, and Paddington wearing the helmet. Happy Love Day, Mr. Gruber, called Paddington. Just then the helmet fell over his eyes. Clang! Thank you, Paddington, chuckled Mr. Gruber. Happy Love Day to you too. After leaving Mr. Gruber's shop, Paddington noticed Pigeonton had found one of his Love Day cards caught on the bunting outside. Well done, Pigeonton, he called as he climbed up to get it. Paddington walked carefully along the bunting, but when he reached the riddle, it got very wobbly. Whoa! Boing! The poor bear was flipped up into the air and left hanging from one foot, upside down. I appeared to be rather tied up, he said with a sigh. Mrs. Bird spotted Paddington dangling from the bunting. How on earth did you get up there, wee cub? She said, climbing up to get him. Now let's get you free. We've only one more card to find. But just as Mrs. Bird untangled Paddington, the bunting snapped and they were both swung down towards the ground. Whoa! What? Mrs. Bird landed perfectly on her motorbike and Paddington landed in a rubbish bin. I found the last card, cheered Paddington, spotting it in the bottom of the bin. Clever wee cub, said Mrs. Bird. Jump on and we'll go straight to the park. And off they sped. Mrs. Bird and Paddington reached the cafe just as it was turning to dusk. The Browns were waiting for them. Hello, everyone, began Paddington. I've got cards for you all. Ah! Paddington tripped and his cards went flying, landing on the grass just as the park keeper was mowing the lawn. The park keeper accidentally cut them into hundreds of pieces with his lawnmower. Oh no, gasped Paddington. My Love Day cards! No one will know that I loved them on Love Day, said Paddington sadly. Cards aren't the only way to show people you love them, Mrs. Brown said. You show us every day by being such a lovely bear. Suddenly the air was full of tiny bits of paper from Paddington's Love Day cards. Oh, gasped everyone, catching the confetti and reading Paddington's Love Day messages. I love you. You make me so happy. You're my very best friend. It was a magical moment. This might be our best love day ever, said Mr. Brown. Thank you, Paddington. I've learned a lot about love today, Aunt Lucy. You can show people you love them just by being yourself. Happy Love Day. Love from Paddington. The end. This episode of The Adventures of Paddington is called Hatching Chicks, as seen on television. Dear Aunt Lucy, spring is a very special time of year. Down on the city farm, something very spring-like was about to happen. Paddington was at the city farm with Jonathan, Judy, and Sam. They were gazing at 3 eggs, waiting for something amazing to happen. I wonder where Orla, the mother hen, is, whispered Paddington. Orla's at the vet, said Baz, the owner of the farm. Could you look after her eggs while I collect her? They are going to hatch into chicks very soon. You can count on us, Baz, said Paddington. Baz put a lamp over the eggs to keep them warm and then left for the vet. We could each choose 1 egg to look after, suggested Judy. Jonathan picked the biggest egg. Judy picked the one with markings on the shell, which left Paddington with the pale egg. Now all we have to do is wait for them to hatch, says Jonathan. Crack! Oh! They gasped in surprise as Jonathan's egg suddenly cracked open. A tiny fluffy cheek peeked out of its shell and hopped over to Jonathan. Jeep, Jeep. Welcome to the world, Paddington said softly. I'll look after you, said Jonathan, cradling the chick. Crack! Oh, here comes my chick, gasped Judy as her egg cracked open. A second fluffy little chick peeks out, but instead of going to Judy, it hopped over to Jonathan. Hey, I'm over here, cried Judy. This little chick loves me too, said Jonathan, carefully holding one in each hand. Ah, sighed Paddington. So cute. Said Judy. She wasn't so sure. Jeep, Jeep. I'm not going anywhere until you hatch, whispered Paddington to his egg. Luckily, he had an emergency marmalade sandwich under his hat, but as he didn't know how long he'd have to wait, he decided to eat it very slowly. Maybe I can help, said Simmy, handing him a folded chair to sit on. Suddenly, Gertrude ran away, bleating loudly. Meh! Oh no, cried Simmy, dashing after her. Gertrude, come back! Paddington tried to pull one end of the chair down. It pinged back. He opened one side, then the other. Bing! Both sides sprang shut. Oh, bother, he said. Finally, he opened both sides and quickly sat down. He was about to take a bite of his sandwich when suddenly, bing! The chair snapped shut on him like a clown shell, knocking his sandwich clean out of his paws. Whoa! Cried Paddington. After Simmy freed Paddington from the chair, the young cub went to check on his egg. The bulb on the lamp suddenly fizzed out. Oh dear, said Paddington. There must be some way for me to keep my egg warm. Paddington was just about to sit on the egg when Simmy spotted him. Paddington! Cried Simmy. You might squash it. Pfft. Simmy suggested putting Aunt Lucy's woolen hat on the egg instead. That's better, said Paddington. Jeep, Jeep. On the other side of the farm, Jonathan was having lots of fun playing with the chicks. Judy wanted to join him, but the chicks kept running straight past her. The chicks followed Jonathan everywhere. The 3 of us are like one big happy family, said Jonathan. Judy felt left out. She wished she could find a way to make the chicks like her too. Shortly after, Judy had an idea. She made a costume, painted her face, and started pretending to be a hen. Bark, 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 bark. I'm Mummy Hen, said Judy, flapping her wings. The chicks backed away. I think you're scaring them, said Jonathan. You're scaring me too. I'm sorry, sighed Judy. I'm just jealous that the chicks like you more than me. Maybe you're just trying too hard, suggested Jonathan. Judy crouched down and the chicks hopped onto a wing. She couldn't believe it. Meanwhile, all the waiting for the egg to hatch had made Paddington feel very sleepy. Must stay awake. He yawned. Simmy found Paddington upside down in a bucket. Are you okay, Paddington? She asked. Not really, he replied, but I need to be uncomfortable, so I stay away. He started to doze off and fell, splat, in a wheelbarrow full of food scraps. Ugh! But it was no use. Paddington soon fell fast asleep. When he woke up, he had a big surprise. "Oh no, it's hatched!" he gasped. But where was the chick? Just then Baz came back with Orla, the mother hen. "Are you okay, Paddington?" he asked. "I don't know where the little chick has gone," said Paddington, feeling upset. "Don't worry," said Simmy, lifting the shell to reveal a tiny tortoise underneath. "Look!" Paddington was confused. "The chick has turned into a baby tortoise?" "I must have mixed up the hen's egg with the tortoise's egg," explained Baz. "What a silly sausage I am! I think I might know where the chick is." The third chick was with the mother tortoise. It saw the mother hen and hopped over to her and the other chicks just as the baby tortoise scuttled to its mother. "Ah!" everyone sighed happily. The little ones were back with their mothers, and it was more than worth waiting for, Aunt Lucy. Spring is such a wonderful time of year. Love from Paddington. The end.